Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Serious Strategy Gamer and it is Friday, so we're returning to our Fridays for Futures stream of Fate of the World, the game where we're trying to solve the climate crisis that is engulfing the world. So just as a reminder, last time we did play the first of this turn of the year 2045. We did already use our policies in China, so we are trying to push these guys in the long term to get to 4th generation nuclear power, because on the global level we see that uranium supply is outstripping our demand. Demand is outstripping our supply, so that is one of the most important things that we're doing here. Also, we're trying to bring down industrial carbon emissions. In India, we're trying to stabilize the things over here a little bit by job sharing initiatives, eco campaigns, so that we're getting them to be a little bit less materialistic, declining coal power and all of that. Whereas in North America, we're mostly, just trotting along the path to the future. So let's go to the other countries then, and let's take a brief look on the world and the global emissions that are going on. So just globally, our emissions, our carbon emissions, which we can see over here in this very, very beautiful graph, they are shifting. They are shifting from, most importantly, Europe and North America. They are declining very fast. But on the other hand, India is expanding massively, as is, China is somewhat stable, but Southern Africa, India, these are really the things that I do worry about, as is maybe the Middle East. So, on the global level though, I do think we have to do a couple of other things, because the situation is still volatile in North Africa. North Africa is really one of the areas that is not going altogether too well, as is Russia. So, let's actually check on Northern Africa, see what we can do, what the news are. The news are horrible, actually. There are a lot of wildfires, there's water stress, which obviously is rather bad. There's nationalism, there's some good developments due to the carbon, and we have more storms in the future. So, I think the volatile situation here is what we do need to deal with the first. So, I think what we actually want to do here is provide additional security assistance, even though that is going to cut into our budget quite dramatically. The educational enrollment, it's important. GDP is very bad, literacy is very bad over here, and it's fairly cheap, so we're going to keep it for now. Russia then, we are also seeing some storm over here, which isn't great. I don't know whether that is only for next turn. Yes, I think this is going to be for next turn. So yeah, on the other hand, Russia is going in the right direction, so that's nice to see. People do not quite like us, but I do think since the situation is volatile here, we do need to provide additional security assistance. So yes, I think that is something that we simply need to do. Volatile is extremely bad. Everything else is at the worst unstable, so we're going to keep it as at that point, and I think that's going to be okay. Right, let's go over to Europe. People don't really like us here, but at least industrial carbon emissions are coming down. There's a little bit more draw chance, or risk I should say. Everything else is going well. People do actually like us a little bit, because they have been welcoming our measures, so that's nice to see. Even more draw chance. So that was draw chance up here as well, wasn't it? Yeah. So definitively we do need to think about droughts and build up improved drought defenses in Europe, and I think that's going to be a good idea. That people will like us a little bit more as well, and that's pretty fantastic, I think. It's also not too expensive, and everything else I do think is still worthwhile going on. Emissions over here are somewhat okay. They are on the global average compared to their population, and I think they are coming down pretty drastically. Yeah. Especially energy sector is doing well in Europe. So that is some good news, although some of the other areas aren't quite doing as well. Middle East, yeah, droughts due to El Nino. Carbon cache is being put to good use, so that's due to the carbon trade emissions, which is really one of those things that in reality you really should be doing, just to cap the total amount of carbon emissions. In game it doesn't quite work that way, which is a little bit unfortunate, but Middle East surprisingly is stable, which is good. They are also doing their higher education program, which is nice. And what are the main sources of emissions? Because I think they are strikingly going up over here. It's mainly energy, although to a smaller degree also industry. We can't really do much about industry quite yet because the GDP isn't quite high enough. So I don't think we can play... Well, we could play coal-free industry for a turn. That wouldn't be the worst. But we are also being warned of El Nino, so might as well build up drought defenses over here as well. Latin America then? What are the news over here? Ooh. Okay, Latin America is now considered developed and has switched its cap and trade objective, so that is a very, very good news for us over here, although the area is unstable. Less stability, they're recovering from a storm, that's nice to see, tech is on the rise. And actually everything is sort of going well over here. How do we look in terms of emissions though? Well, somewhat stable, energy is going, agriculture. It's a very mixed bag over here, I have to say. But I do think it does make sense to keep on playing the industry card over here, because probably most of the energy is being used in the industry. Well, not most of it, but a very large chunk, so I think that is still a very good card to play. Could play the higher education, but I do think what we do want over here is maybe do the eco-awareness campaign, so that long-term Latin America tends to be a little bit less troublesome for us, and that would actually be very great. Southern Africa then, one of the fastest growing regions in the world, which is causing a lot of trouble for us at this moment. So yeah, people are very sick over here, which does leave them concerned, which again leads to an instability. So let's think about what we can do about this. Well, we could certainly fund the medical welfare program. We could also do job sharing, but I don't necessarily know whether that is going to be the most important. Well, how high is your unemployment right now? It's not that high. 11% is not... It's not dramatic. Your GDP per capita is pretty bad though. Could actually grow commerce a little bit. That would also lead to less unemployment. That might not be a very terrible idea. Just try to bring up the commercial sector over here. There is a risk with the commercial sector. The commercial sector does have very low... It has a very high productivity and it has a very low carbon emission. Because it's not industry, it's not agriculture, so this might actually be very useful for us. We weren't warned of anything in particular, were we? No. We were not. And water stress isn't extremely high over here. So that might actually be a very good card to play. Let's do that. It's not too expensive either, so that's good. South Asia then. Carbon cash flashpots, that's not good. Agriculture's decreasing a little bit. Yeah, but otherwise you are doing somewhat fine. Your emissions are going up, I presume. Yeah, they are, especially due to energy. Anything we can do about that though? Don't think so. You're probably a little bit too poor. Yeah, rather quite a bit too poor to do much about it. Well, integration won't help us a lot. Could protect the land and soils, we could discourage coal use in the industry, but I don't know what you're actually using to generate power. Yeah, mostly coal, well, or large extent coal, which isn't great. You know what, we're gonna be a little bit conservative over here for now and just do an eco-awareness campaign, so people will like us a little bit more in the future. News in Japan, 4th generation nuclear breakthrough. Carbon cuts are not going great, so that does decrease our economy a little bit, but it's still fine, it's only 2%. People don't really like us over here, which is bad of course, and we have been doing robotic research. We are very close to getting aerosols, and that's going to be extremely important, and that is one of the reasons why I don't want to fund anything over here that is too bad for us. Is there anything we could do at all that would be considered positive? Reduce working week? No, I don't think that's what we do want. We could do improved drought defenses. That might not be too bad. Water management program, or we could do carbon, a business and household carbon recs. It's a useful tech. People do like that a little bit. Not actually too much, so I think what we're going to do is build up the improved draw defenses, and that's going to be okay. Good. That does surprisingly leave us with a little bit of money, so I appreciate that very much, because that means that down here in India we should be able to buy another agent, and I think that's going to be extremely important because, well, we basically saw that by now India is the second biggest polluter in the world, and that is a problem. So I think what we do want to do over here is have a look at what's causing the issue. So let's have a look at the emissions. You can see energy is the predominant source of bad things down here in India. So energy is being mostly used to fuel the industry, but we can't do anything about the industry until we are at about 12,000 GDP per capita, and we are very, very far away from that. So that is definitively a problem. I also think we do have some water problems here, don't we? No, not quite, even though... Yeah, the sick environment, that is due to the toxicity, due to the fact that we are using power. So we are using coal to fuel our power, so that is really one of the big issues. So I think it would make sense to try to switch India over to nuclear power. So let's actually go to the tech screen, and shouldn't only look at popular things, and acquire CCS, and that will allow us next turn to acquire nuclear power, and then going forward we can influence India a little bit more in that direction, and I think that would be a very good idea. Yeah, I think I'm very happy with that result. Right, so that does leave us with China. China, I mean, we do have a lot of things over here, so we might actually want to buy another recruit in India. Let's do that and get the higher education program, so that we are bringing up the GDP here a little bit, and that I think should be a very good thing for us going forward. Yeah, very happy with that. That doesn't leave us with that much money though. Northern Africa. Anything else we could do over here? Medical welfare, integration, that's not crucial. Could do something more down here in Southern Africa though. But I do like the idea of growing commerce over here, so that should probably be okay. Well, in Oceania people don't necessarily like us. Ooh, and they do have a lot of refugees over here, so that is a problem. Forest burning. But all in all, you are okay. What I would actually like to do over here though is fund biotech research. Australia is a very good place to do that, although we'll be getting biofuels next turn anyway, second generation biofuels. But nanomedicine in the long term would be an extremely good investment over here. But well, we don't really have the slots. We could get rid of the eco-awareness campaign. On the other hand, how many refugees have you got if that is a problem down here? 4.5%. That's pretty extreme. How does that look in other countries? India doesn't have any refugees, neither does Europe. I'm just looking at the main scale over here. Russia doesn't, North America practically none. Oceania has an extremely high amount of refugees. Okay, so we probably do need to do something about that, and I think what we should do then is do the integration program. That does do a lot of good things for us. Yeah, so let's go with this, and that's fine. Again, we do have some money, but I'm not sure what we should be spending that on. We could switch out a couple of cards, but yeah, I don't think that's necessarily required. Did we do anything where we went a little bit cheap? I think so. Well, maybe in Southeast Asia. Maybe we could do something to protect the land and soil over here, because I think that is still a problem. Is it? Let's check. So, sorry. Deforestation? Yes, I think that's still a big problem over here in the world. And we can actually check that over here as well. Yeah, Southeast Asia and Latin America really are the biggest culprits. Ooh, as is Oceania. Still, I think that's fine, so let's advance to the next turn and see what's going to happen. So things really aren't going great. So we would lose the game at 3 degrees by 2200. We have 150 years to go and we'd still be losing extremely badly. Even emissions are still rising, so we're accelerating that growth every turn. Nevertheless, good news over here, second generation biofuels breakthrough in stratospheric aerosols. Both of these are very good, so no further news. I consider no further news good news. India, emissions are only increasing by 4%, so that's pretty good. We expected a little bit more. And Oceania has actually seen a dramatic decrease. So that's nice to see. Northern Africa also decreased. Very nice. That is very good news. How do people like us? Well, in North America they're starting to like us a little bit less. Some of the other countries are stable. Northern Africa is liking us a little bit more, so that's nice to see. The world news we just saw, global population is increasing. Let's have a look at the emissions then. Where are they coming from? Yeah, they are still at best stable. China is also stable. There's no way around that. Middle East is somewhat stable. Oceania is irrelevant. Southern Africa increasing. Europe decreasing. India still going up and going up dramatically. So I think by now probably India might be the biggest one. Not quite, but they are very close to it. Okay, let's look at China. What are the news over here? CCS research, that is nice. Water stress is of course a problem. Coal is being replaced by electricity in the industry, so that is extremely nice. And improved manufacturing processes mean that the industry itself is producing less and less emissions. So that of course is great as well. Transport is stable. Energy is still growing actually, so we'll need to have a look at the sources of energy and what's going on over there. And agriculture is taking a larger and larger piece of the emissions over here. We are not using any coal. We are using an enormous amount of uranium though. And the energy resources. Yeah, so uranium has been the day saver actually. So this is great so far, but yeah, we'll have to acquire actually fourth generation nuclear technology, because it will allow us to use uranium much more efficiently. So that is extremely important for us, and I think going to be a very nice change. The other thing is the water stress. So all sectors 20% less water usage would be extremely good for us. I do think we are still in agriculture. Water stress is very high, and that is due to water usage, and that comes from well, both industry and agriculture. So we can't actually do this just by addressing agriculture, which we might be doing by biochar, but I do think the enhanced water infrastructure might actually be better for that. So let's pick that, and that's great because that means less water stress, and less water stress means less migrants, and that means less stress on everything else. Right, let's jump over to India and let's have a look at the news in India. Air pollution, yes, that is due to fuel toxicity use. Basically, we're still burning coal, and that is pretty bad. CCS has been researched. Eco campaign, India is now balanced, and that's pretty good for us. Agriculture is an issue. Water is an issue. Job sharing makes progress and is actually scrapped, so that's nice to see. And again, more sickness, and situation is stabilizing. Yeah, so sickness is one of the biggest problems in India. For India, my biggest problem actually is the emissions, and that's still due to energy, although it's flattening out a little bit. And GDP per capita has been increasing. It's not really where the mean is, but it's still going better, so that's nice to see. And coal power usage is also declining, so let's have a look at the electricity. 27%, that's not too bad. Well, but we're replacing that by oil, and there's only so much oil in the world to go around, so yeah, I do think we have to acquire fourth generation nuclear technology down here and try to use that in the future to build up a little bit more. People are content it is very unstable, but I think that will probably solve itself. Smart grids might be a very good investment. Smart grids, acquiring smart grids would mean less energy use, less residential energy use, more GDP. That is pretty strong and important card. On the other hand, coal-free industry. Well, as long as we are mostly burning coal, I don't think this is the appropriate way to go. So yeah, actually let's try to acquire smart grids and lift India out of poverty. Just a little bit. I think that would be great. Yeah. Things aren't going great over here. How do we look in terms of stability then? Unstable, very unstable. Restrictive is actually extremely stable, which isn't necessarily the best either. But no one is volatile anymore, so that is extremely good to see, I think. Right. Who are the other biggest emitters? The Middle East. Can we do something about the Middle East? Because I think we should probably be over 12,000 GDP. Yes, so that does allow us to play a lot more cards, and that's great. There's a draw chance, or risk. Situation is stable though, so we could adapt to heat and drought, but that would be just an infinite card to play, so that would be just wasting money, I think, at this point. So let's actually have a look. I think we should be able to play both of these cards. These are very, very important and good cards. So where are emissions coming from? Energy, industry, and energy in turn is mostly because we are burning gas actually still, and we're using that for mostly commerce and residential actually. How much are we using from industry? Well, quite a bit though. Okay, so I think the business, household and carbon regs is one of the most important cards, and the other one is probably industry. Industrial carbon regs. It's going to be okay. Good. So let's go for something fun, because in Japan we'll be able to do something extremely fun. Let's go through the news first. Not much of any note except for this one, and that is our robotics program has been useful, and it has discovered aerosols. And aerosols are extremely helpful because they will allow us to, think over here, deploy sulfate aerosols. Direct Japan to send the seed the stratosphere with aerosols particles reflecting the sun's heat and light back into space. So that will mean that global warming will decrease somewhat. The local agricultural performance will drop. That's not necessarily that bad in Japan. Japan isn't that big an agricultural country, and globally it will drop by 1%, which isn't that great. This is an extremely good card because it does buy you time, and that is great. It's not gonna solve global warming. It only can delay it because note this paragraph down here. High disparity between emissions and temperature can lead to severe weather. So this won't solve everything, but in a small dose it will be helpful. And the other important thing about this is that this will be something that consumerist or materialist societies will like. So we are going to play this. People are going to like us more, and that should be pretty good for us. So I'm very much looking forward to playing that and maybe reducing our emissions just ever so slightly. But yeah, that is why it was so extremely important to get Japan to develop that. Right, so we have done China, India, Middle East. Let's go to North America then. Things over here shouldn't be... Yeah, so there's more draw chance. We're heading in the right direction. Everything seems to be going relatively well over here. Old reactors are being replaced by newer ones, so that is great as well. And we have researched second generation biofuel, which is nice. It's not going to be extremely helpful. Our overall oil usage, if we go over here, is, I think, we can't actually see it over here, oil use. Yeah, so you can see the overall drawn amounts of oil and terawatt hours are extremely high in conventional and tar sands. It's extremely low for synthetics, so that really is just not that important right now. It's a small, very, very small change. And nevertheless, it's a step in the right direction, so we should appreciate that. Should we review anything? We are declining coal power, which I think is going to be okay. What are we actually using power from? Still a little bit coal. So that might still be useful. I think we can continue to do this. We are expanding oil production still. And people don't really like us over here. So let's drop the expansion of oil production for a second. And build up just more defenses. We also at some point have to think about the wildlife conversation. People don't like that, but it's an important step because otherwise we would be losing points. Some good technologies are just around the corner. Concentrated for photovoltaic cells will be extremely nice. Quantum computing will just boost our economy a little bit, so that's nice to see. In 10 turns we might actually get aerosols over here as well, so it's pretty good because we don't have to buy them then. How are things in Europe? We have CCCS. Everything is going pretty well actually. So that's nice to see. We do have one slot left. We could do forest. We could switch to... Oh, do we still use coal in the industry? No, we're still using coal in our energy mix, which isn't necessarily great. Where are emissions coming from? It's somewhat mixed actually. Transport is also still a lot. Fuel oil. I'm tempted to actually get the GE headquarters over here. This is fairly expensive, but it will be nice to do that in a region where we are not consumerist yet, or anymore. You know what, let's do the eco-awareness campaign. I think North America would be the other good and natural place for the GEO headquarters, which will be fairly important to get in the places where we do have the technologies available, but yeah, it would be a little bit better if we could switch the outlook of Europe, and maybe North America will stick to consumerist outlook for a while, simply because we do need their oil, and bio or yeah, well, green outlook areas really don't like if you're mining too much oil, so yeah, I think that would make sense. Let's switch over to Southern Africa, where things are going somewhat okay. Let's actually look at their economy. Is our GDP is growing, that's nice to see. And how are these sectors looking? Commerce is actually growing. I think it's growing quickly. So that's the capital index, right? Yeah, it's growing very quickly. That's nice. Yeah, I think that's probably the best that we can do in Southern Africa for this moment. Northern Africa is still stable. There's a lot of water stress. Storm damage has been averted, so that's nice to see. Yeah, water stress. What should we do about that though? Could switch to organic farming. People will not like that. But all in all, I think that's not a bad idea. And let's do higher education. That's always a good idea. People are still materialist in outlook over here, which isn't great. Latin America, how are things looking? There's a little bit more draw chance that we might have to think about. Okay, let's try to build up draw defenses. We are already at adaptation to that, so there's not much point doing that much more in this regard. So I think it makes sense to continue the green propaganda over here. Middle East, I think we've dealt with that. Yes, we have. It does leave Russia. What are the news? Drought. Yeah, drought. We could adapt to that, but I'm not particularly amazed by that idea. Could do protection of land and soil. I think that's pretty important in Russia. On the other hand, these are also fairly good. Business and carbon regs and industrial regs. What are you actually producing in terms of emissions? Not that much. Mostly for energy. And you're using energy, well, fairly well distributed in all areas. So you know what, since that will make people like us a little bit more, we might do the business and household carbon regs over here. I think that's a good idea. Southeast Asia is looking fine as far as I can tell. No extremely bad news. Cropland management program is going fairly well. That's nice to see. Deforestation is slowing. Good. All in all, fairly good things for South Asia. Oceania. Also, everything is pretty good over here. Yeah, fairly nice. So, oh, I think we're also doing, in Oceania, we were seeing quite a bit of migration, which people don't tend to like very much, so we'll have to see a little bit about that. Could do this, but I'm a little bit more mindful to do a biotech research program over here. I think that's okay. Japan we dealt with, so that does leave us actually with quite a bit of money left. That's unusual. We don't normally have money left over after doing our things, so let's actually look whether our goals are still aligned with what we're doing. So the Middle East is growing fairly rapidly in terms of emissions, and we still only have 3 people over here. Other than that, we pretty much have 3 people everywhere. You know what, let's buy another person in the Middle East and think about what card we want to play over here. Well, water stress is a problem, forestation is a problem, oil usage is a problem. No, sorry, oil production is fairly good over here, so certainly don't want to change that. Could play coal-free industry, but that would mean you're mainly using, I presume that you're mainly using other things to deal with that. You know what, let's play the wildlife conversation over here. It's gonna be done fairly quickly. People do somewhat like us over here, so I'm not too concerned with that. And down here in Southern Africa we can buy another slot as well and think about what we can do over here. Could do the protect land and soil. Medical welfare, eco-wear. Eco-wear is always a good idea. Man, we actually have some money left. That's so unusual. Okay, let's get one over here as well. I think we are a little bit unbalanced over here in South Asia. You're still consumerist, so you know what? Let's actually also do an eco-awareness campaign over here. We can't buy any more slots in India, so I think that's going to be has to be okay, basically. China, we could do more. People are balanced over here. Well, if we buy another slot, we only have about $10 left. Well, business, household, and carbon regs would be great to play over here, but where we don't have the money, or is it 50? Yeah, it's 50. So we would actually have the money. How much energy are we using for on the private sector? It's actually quite a bit. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. China is still one of the biggest emitters, and I think it makes sense to address that pretty aggressively. So yeah, very nice. Yeah, so we're mostly dealing with India and China, the old developed world, and then slowly building up our capabilities in the other areas. So yes, I very much like to see that, and let's see what's going to happen next turn. Though that has to wait until next time because we are a little bit over our time already. So until now, I say thank you very much for watching. Do leave a like and all that if you want, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.